you have to like kill your survival instinct. Opposing passes head on at each other, passing like 70 feet apart, 500 knots each. The flying is just so different than any other flying I did. Like, you are a precision demo pilot. You are also a character at Disney World. Like, you have to be on, you have to be friendly and personable, and you are the face of the Air Force for those 2 to 3 years.
Of the more than 200 numbered episodes in the Fighter Pilot podcast catalog, 4 have been about the U.S. Navy's Blue Angels, 1 has been about the Canadian Force's Snowbirds, but ashamedly, none have been about the U.S. Air Force's Thunderbirds. Well, that ends today because joining me in studio is former Thunderbird solo pilot Michelle Curran. Mace, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I feel like I should almost be offended that you had like the ratio is 4 to 1, but work in progress. So I'm happy to be here.
You know, I said way back on episode 0, the introduction, I said, hey, I'm starting the show and here's what we're going to do. It's probably going to be Navy heavy because those are the people I know. But yeah, we're equal opportunity. We've had Bomber Month. We've had all kinds of Air Force stuff. But yeah, never the Thunderbird till now. So thank you.
Changing it.
All right, good. Well, besides being a Thunderbird, you were an F-16 pilot. Mm-hmm. You are now a keynote speaker. You're an author. You're doing all kinds of stuff. And I really look forward to uncovering all that today.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm excited to talk about someone who is also familiar with jets.
I
do a lot of interviews with non-military, non-aviation shows, so this will be a little bit different.
All right. Well, and hopefully our audience as well will understand all our jargon and everything, but we sometimes explain it at the bottom.
Acronyms.
Let's start at the beginning, though. Where are you from? Where'd you go to school? And what made you interested in joining the military?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small town in northern Wisconsin, about 4,000 people as far as population goes, like rural farming town. Not a military family, not an aviation family. So blue-collar family, super hard work ethic, just not a lot of exposure to the opportunities in aviation. As I got into high school, I knew my parents didn't have a college fund for me, so we started to have those conversations about scholarships. I was a really shy, introverted kid, but also super driven, kind of perfectionist, so I got really good grades because of that. So we started looking at opportunities. I knew I did not want to stay in my small town. I wanted to travel all over the world. I wanted to do something exciting. I was a little bit of an adrenaline junkie as well. I loved roller coasters, climbing trees, all that kind of stuff, adventurous. So Air Force ROTC seemed like it fit the bill really well. So I applied for a scholarship. I got one. I went from Wisconsin over to the University of St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota on a ROTC scholarship. But at that time, I wanted to be an FBI agent. So the grand plan was Air Force will pay for school. I will do 4 years on active duty, probably in OSI, Special Investigations, to get experience that will make me more competitive to then get out and apply to the FBI Academy. This is my grand plan at like 17 years old. So I go to college as a criminal justice major. Somewhere like halfway through, we do a base visit down to Tyndall Air Force Base in Florida. So we're standing there on the ramp, and 2 F-15s take off, full AB, to go to a training mission. And it's at the end of the day, so like the sun is starting to set. So you get jet noise, vibrates your whole body, deafening, goosebumps, visceral reaction, orange afterburner flame against the Florida setting sun, and I'm just like, holy shit. How do I go do that? It was just like the physical excitement was crazy. And I was like, forget the FBI. So like the next year, I think, is when they're like, hey, who wants to be a pilot? Who wants to compete for a pilot slot? Put my name in the hat, get one. Because again, I still had very good grades. That was my strong point, strong GPAs.
All right.
Go off to pilot training. And I walk into pilot training with a criminal justice degree as my background, not engineering, and 0 civilian flight experience. I think I had ridden along in a Cessna one time. So then the drinking from a fire hose started.
I can only imagine.
Yes, steep learning curve, turns out.
Did, as you went through flight school, the Eagle kind of hold your imagination, or was it jets or just anything?
Fighter jets in general.
Okay.
So I went in when I, compete for that pilot slot. It wasn't I want to be an Air Force pilot. It was I want to be a fighter pilot. And as I started to learn more about the different jet options, this idea of being in something small and maneuverable that seemed like an extension of your body was really appealing. It felt like the purest form of flying, and the F-16 is what fit that bill. So in my mind, in ROTC even, I was like, I'm going to go fly the F-16. That is like the goal I was visualizing. I'm like, we're going to make this happen. As I got to pilot training and got to the end where you fill out your dream sheet, list all the aircraft you want, I debated for quite a while whether I wanted to put the F-16 first or the A-10 first. Close air sport, cool mission, the gun is cool. But when I thought about my spark of inspiration, a lot of it was about the sound and the afterburner and all of that. And I was like, the A-10 doesn't do that. So the F-16 went first, A-10 went second, rest of the fighters went from there. They were just starting to take people straight to the F-22 from pilot training, so I think that was next, and then everything else from there. So I very much had the mentality, fighters or bust, which I graduated in 2011. At that time, classes were 25 students. You're maybe getting 2 fighter jets for the class. So odds are not in your favor.
Performance really matters there. Well, I don't know if the viewers or listeners could hear it, but it sounded like something just took off with Afterburner a little bit ago.
It did, yeah.
One of the side benefits or drawbacks, depending how you look at it, of having a studio at an airport, but it fits the bill here. All right, so you already answered the question I was thinking about. So 2011, so the exclusion for females in combat had been a couple decades removed at that point, so everything was available to you. And was it just based on your performance? But you said you didn't have any flight experience, so...
Yeah.
Figured out?
Yeah, I did figure it out. I think I went through a few phases. When I went to initial flight screening, which we did in Pueblo, Colorado, it was just a month long, learned to fly the DA-20, tiny little airplane. You get stuck to your instructor's Velcro, puttering along. But I'm glad that was there, because going straight to the T6 would have been very aggressive for someone who had zero experience. So I got to solo the DA-20, got to learn what airport signs mean, you know what I mean? The most how to talk on the radio, the most basic stuff, what an oil system is. I just had no exposure to that. So at IFS, I remember feeling like I was clinging to staying in there by my fingernails. I would stay up till 11, 12 o'clock at night, just doing flashcards, study guides, just cramming. We'd wake up at 5:30 in the morning. It was super intense, and I felt like that was the first time where I was like, oh, maybe I'm not actually going to be able to do this. But then again, kind of the work ethic combined with just being good at taking tests, being good at memorizing things, I caught up, I would say, probably a couple weeks into that month-long program. And even though I still felt like I was barely surviving there, when I left, my flight commander, broke character, I guess, because they're intense there. Okay. And he was like, you did amazing. You did a great job. And I was like, wait, what? Because I seriously thought I was about to get washed out the entire time, which I think they kind of do that on purpose. So that was a little confidence boost. Okay, I can learn this one step at a time, just like anything else. And then I went to the T6, quite the jump in performance, right? It's 300 knots, pulls 6 Gs, fully aerobatic. That airplane was just so fun. A lot of work, of course, drinking from a fire hose still. But I really thrived in a high-pressure, structured environment. So the fact that it was this is your syllabus. Here is the grading criteria for this next simulator you're going to do. And then once you do that, you're going to go do this. Here's how you succeed. I love that environment, especially at that age. I was like, cool, let me do well. Let me get the A on my paper. And so I just did well in that environment. I didn't struggle with any motion sickness. I loved the physicality of it. Maybe not the G's so much, those are fine, but really going upside down, aileron rolls, all that stuff was just fun to me. And I think there was just a combination of really focused drive towards a very specific goal, a lot of hard work, with just kind of some natural aptitude that I didn't know I had, but worked out, so there's some luck in there. Yeah, and I ended up towards the top of my class and got the F-16 at the end of that program.
Wow. Well, I personally struggled with knowing something, which it sounds like you had no problem with, but then applying it. Mm-hmm. And so if you didn't have that struggle, then I would see that you did better. But I also struggled with some air sickness. So if you didn't have to deal with all those things,
people did that.
Well, I just gritted it out basically. But I still can get air sick. If I go in a small airplane right now, I probably would.
If I am not at the controls, when I don't want to fast forward all the way to the Thunderbirds, but when I was teaching my replacement when I was on my way out, and I'm trying to teach him solo Thunderbird maneuvers in the back, and I'm in the back seat. Okay, man, I know you've never done this before. Let's get like a inverted flight. Everyone pushes like -3 Gs. All right, let's do a 4-point roll. You're like, bam, helmet against the canopy. I'm like, I'm going to throw up.
You've made me feel much better. Thank you.
Yeah.
I forget what you call it in the Air Force, but the day you find out what you're getting.
Drop night.
Drop night.
Yeah.
I've seen some videos online. I don't know if the Navy does this anymore. It wasn't this way when I went through, but was that a big deal, getting the F-16?
Oh, yeah. It's like burned into my mind. I don't have a video of it like everyone does now. Okay. I see everyone else's recent classes online since everything's recorded with a cell phone. But how our class did it is someone made these slides where it was like Google Earth, and I was Columbus, Mississippi is where I went to pilot training. So it would be zoomed in on the airfield in Columbus. It would zoom out, kind of circle around, and then it would zoom in to the training base you were going to learn your next aircraft. So that's how you found out. And you're up in front of everyone. All your instructors are there. Your friends and family are in the audience. It was at the O Club, at the Officers Club. And I had been like so wanting a fighter so badly. Everyone knew. My instructors knew, and they knew I was getting one, but I didn't. And so they're like, let's screw with her because it's going to work out in her favor. So this is the perfect opportunity. So 25 people, I found out last of 25. And I thought there was a decent chance that if there weren't enough fighters, I might become a FAPE, a first assignment instructor pilot. So I would stay at Columbus as an instructor. Columbus, Mississippi, not to hate on it, but it was not like my dream place to be for another 3 years. So mine, I get up there, everyone else already knows. No one's paying attention at this point because everyone's just celebrating what they're going to go fly. Yeah. It zooms out, zooms back in on Columbus, and I'm just like, and then it jumps all the way over to Luca Air Force Base in Phoenix for F-16 training.
Because that's all there is there, right? So you pretty much know at that point?
Oh, I knew it as soon as it went. Yeah. Now it's in Holloman, New Mexico. Okay. F-35 is taking
Luke
over.
Luke. Okay.
Yeah. Burned into my mind, those jerks.
Well, good. At least they still have a sense of humor about it. But what was being an F-16 pilot like in the Air Force? I mean, that must have been interesting. I'm sure you did some deployments, end up overseas.
Highs and lows. I felt that initial overwhelm in the DA-20. But then the T-6, the T-38, I felt like I got my arms around those fairly quickly. Mm-hmm. The leap from the T-38 to the F-16, it's a big performance jump.
Yeah.
And I still think I learned to fly that airplane fairly quickly. It flies easily with the fly-by-wire controls and everything. But then you get into the tactics. And, I felt like I had done well in all these programs. And I was like, okay, I'm like built to do this. I can do this. I just have to work hard. And then I go to the B course, which is where you learn to fly the F-16, struggle a little bit, end up probably middle of the pack there, which was a new thing for me, right? Like I'm very much an overachiever and my identity was kind of wrapped up in that.
Okay.
So I'm like, oh, middle of the pack, like that doesn't feel good to me. It's like being your high school valedictorian and then going to Harvard. And now everyone is, and you're just like average. You're like, what is this?
I wouldn't know, but I've heard.
Yeah, same. And then I go off to Misawa, Japan. First assignment overseas, northern Japan, pretty rural area. I think the town's like 30,000 people. You're like 4 hours away on the bullet train from Tokyo. 200 inches of snow there per year. Great skiing. But
you're used to that from Wisconsin?
Wisconsin. Yeah, the temperatures were actually more reasonable. It was pretty isolating, though, especially you don't speak Japanese. So your whole world is your squadron.
Yeah.
You live on base. I lived in a 4-apartment complex, and every single person in those 4 apartments was another pilot in my squadron or the other F-16 squadron on base. It's very much work hard, play hard. Everyone's families are super tight-knit. There's a lot of pros, but there's also some cons that can come with that if you start to struggle in any way because you feel like you're in a fishbowl. Yeah. Like everyone's watching your life. So I get to Misawa, and every other time where I felt like I struggled a little bit, I could work hard enough to just overcome that. And then I get there, and now it's, everyone's experienced. I am literally the only lieutenant. There's a couple other young captains. I think the other newer people had been FAPEs, okay. So they had kind of cut their teeth as a pilot for 3 years as an instructor. Mm-hmm. So yes, I am, I don't know, do you guys have the LPA, the Lieutenant Protection?
Yeah, we call it JOPA.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you make the popcorn, refresh the snack bar. Right. You're in charge of entertainment and all of this stuff. It can be super fun when it's you and like a few of your lieutenant friends. Not so fun when it's you by yourself. Not fun at all, actually. Yeah. So there's just adjustments that have to happen because the tactics are now you have to be able to fly the airplane with your eyes closed, not thinking about it, right? So the tactics, and it's a SEAD squadron. So suppression of enemy air defenses, super technical, so many beeps and squeaks, things that are just not natural. Like my brain doesn't love that kind of stuff. So I struggled with those concepts. And I also struggled with figuring out my identity in that world. I think we all come in feeling like we need to prove ourselves, especially with the younger pilots. There's a lot of like jockeying for position. Like you're all kind of eyeing each other up and how are they doing and who's struggling and all that kind of stuff. I very much felt that. And then like I was under a microscope and just so much pressure. Some of it I put on myself. Some of it is inherent in the environment. Yeah. Some of it does come from, there's just not a lot of women. So there seems like there's extra eyes like just waiting to see what's going to happen. Like, are you going to do great or are you going to do bad? And not that they want you to do bad, but people are just curious. Yeah. So you feel that. Yeah. And so I struggled that first assignment. And I think in hindsight, I was probably very much like an average young wingman. I mean, I got accolades from instructors and stuff, and like at a normal level, I never had progress checks or like didn't fail any check rides or nothing like that. Yeah. But in my mind, it was like, how did I get here? I don't deserve to be here. Very much imposter syndrome.
That can be healthy, I feel like, sometimes, because it makes you keep after it.
For sure.
But I appreciate the vulnerability, and I appreciate what you're saying, because part of my crusade on this podcast for the last 8 years has been to show people that it's not just what you see in the movies. You know, not everybody has it like Hangman, all figured out all the time. You know, we struggle. We have real insecurities. We have real setbacks. And by the way, what we do is hard. Mm-hmm. You know, you flying the airplane, like you just said, like that, you don't even think about that. You're thinking about fighting it. Yep. You're thinking about dealing with emergencies. You're dealing with whatever the enemy might be throwing at you. And, you know, as I've said before, I take a page from Waylon Jennings, or Waylon, however you say it, but we're every bit as professional as doctors and lawyers and such, because there's so much you have to know. Yep. And it's not just, I didn't do well, so we lost some money, or, you know, something got ruined, but I could die, or somebody else could, even worse, arguably. Yeah. So, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I assume you gritted it out and figured it out.
Yeah, it was painful, though. Yeah. But I think that experience informed a lot of what I speak on now, what I write about now, and what people find really relatable and really, really useful beyond just the entertainment factor and the intrigue that comes with like hearing fighter pilot stories. Yeah. They're like, oh, wait, that stuff's really cool. But also all those feelings Mace is talking about when she's like young and inexperienced and made mistakes and just the self-doubt. And I got to a point probably in that first year where I would have actually quit.
If they'd let you?
I think it was twofold. I remember feeling trapped because I had a 10-year contract, right? They just spent $1 million+ to train me. Mm-hmm. And then I also was so adverse to the idea of failing and the like shame that I associated with that even though I felt trapped and wanted to leave, like I didn't love this like I thought I was going to, the idea of saying that and actually acting on it felt like so shameful.
Was even worse.
Yeah. And so I stuck it out, and it ended up working out. I got through that. And I think a lot of people experience that friction point if they're doing something really difficult. And now that I'm speaking and telling my story to people, a lot of doctors and lawyers tell me exactly that same thing. They're like, you go to law school, you go to med school, and you do well in those programs, say, and then you get to your residency or to your first firm, and you don't know anything. It's like the tip of the iceberg. And you've like never felt dumb before, and you've never built resilience before. Like you know how to work hard, but that self-belief is still just not quite solidified. And so you have to realize that you're going to fail and struggle and crawl your way through that, and then it's going to happen again and again. And seeing that happen, like seeing yourself go through that, is what builds that trust that you have the resilience to deal with those types of things. Yeah. So sometimes you just have to experience the hard stuff.
But we can't always pull ourselves up by the bootstraps. Did you have someone come alongside that recognized you were struggling and encourage you?
I would say I self-isolated in Misawa, for sure. I think that there were a lot of people in my squadron that would have done that. But in my mind, letting them know how much I felt like I was struggling was a sign of weakness. And that wasn't allowed in that environment. And it wasn't like that in my next squadron, where I like kind of went, like the switch flipped and I was able to grow a lot and overcome that. I think that environment in Japan, we were really, really good at what we did. Very high ops tempo. Like you're one of the frontline squadrons there. Like we worked 12 to 15 hour days all the time. It was normal. But also with it being a pretty young squadron, a lot of first assignment people, there was that, like the egos and the needing to prove themselves. And then my next squadron that I went to was a reserve squadron. I was active duty assigned to it.
Okay.
But the bulk of the squadron are reservists. So a lot of them
airline pilots
fly for the airlines,
yeah.
fly the F-16 part-time. Even the full-time guys are all like majors or older. So they're,
chill,
mid-30s. They realize that work-life balance is important. Most of them have kids. Mm-hmm. They have hobbies outside of work. That just wasn't a thing in Japan, I'll be honest. It was like work was your life. Yeah. And then you hung out with the other families when you weren't at work. But that was it. Your world was very small there. And I think there's some wisdom that comes with that experience where you're like, I know how to do my job. I don't have to prove myself. Like the egos kind of just get set aside. You're like, yeah, I'm going to mess up. Like that's normal. We all mess up here. And that environment was exactly what I needed after the 3 years in Japan, because I was burned out of 3 years of like hypervigilance, self-auditing, like everything you say and do, you're like, oh, should I have laughed at that joke? Was like that, should I have spoken up in that debrief? Was that the right thing to do? I just felt like I was walking on eggshells trying to fit in so hard. And then I got to Texas, to the SPADs, that's the name of that squadron, and they were just like, hey, welcome, like come as you are, like that guy likes to do this, and that guy flies for Delta, and that guy flies for American, and blah, blah, blah. And they were just so chill.
Yeah.
But they were still really good at what they did. I deployed with that squadron. It was awesome. But that environment was what I needed at that moment. Mm. I don't know how it would have gone had I gone to another active duty ops squadron, if I would have just gotten through it as I became an instructor and just, eventually you just prove yourself because you're there long enough and you know enough. I don't know if it would have worked out as well, because I got to Texas and it was like my growth and performance and everything just got like on a rocket ship. It completely changed.
Interesting. Yeah, and if you had gone to another active squadron, there might have been that added pressure now of they expect me to know something because I just spent 3 years over in Misawa. Not to say you didn't know anything, but again, right, it's an interesting life we live because there's a lot of external pressure, there's a lot of internal pressure. We want to do well, and the consequentiality of doing something poorly is huge.
It's huge.
Yeah. Well, I guess we're supposed to talk about the Thunderbirds at some point, but this is so fascinating. Yeah. At what point now, what year are we now when you're in Texas?
Yeah, so I go to Texas in, I think, 2015 to 2018.
All right. Because you become a Thunderbird in 2019?
Yeah, so I get hired over the summer of 2018. I move from Texas to Vegas, where the Thunderbirds are based, that fall, and then 2019 show season is like my first time out in front of the public.
Of course, not knowing what the world had in store in 2020. But
oh, yes, we can talk about that too.
But let's back up. I mean, so obviously you overcome the concerns you have and the insecurities perhaps. Mm-hmm. And at some point, is it your idea or maybe does someone passing by like, oh, hey, Mace, you should consider being a Thunderbird? But how does that come up?
Yeah. So it was one of those things that had always intrigued me.
Okay.
Like anytime I saw someone else was applying in my one of my other squadrons or someone would talk about it, I would just like be listening, collecting data.
Because the process can be complicated.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And it's competitive. But in my mind, for the longest time, it was one of those things that I wasn't good enough to do, right? Like I still had that imposter syndrome a little bit, even though my performance was going up, my experience was going up. But while I was in Texas, I made a conscious decision that I was going to start saying yes to more things that felt outside my comfort zone. Whether that's like being a mission commander for something, being a flight lead for this mission, or there was a big one that I think really flipped the switch is about halfway through my time there, I had just deployed for the first time, which I think can give you some confidence to actually go do the mission for real.
Where did you deploy?
To Afghanistan, to Bagram.
Okay.
So we did close air support there. Of course, it didn't go perfectly, but it went well. Like, it was like, oh, I can actually execute the mission. Like, this is proving to myself that I'm capable and, trained for it for years. Mm-hmm. Actually, rubber finally meets the road. So I come back from that. The next summer, I see an email that Poland is looking for American instructor pilots. American F-16 instructor pilots. I think the only reason I got this email is because I was tied to a reserve squadron, because it was traditionally reservists that would go get put on orders and do 60 days in Poland or 3 months in Poland instructing them in their aircraft. So I see this email and I expect everyone in my squadron to be like, oh, how cool is that? Like, you could go live in Europe for the summer. Like, their jets have like drogue chutes and conformal fuel tanks and just like a lot of cool stuff ours don't have. And like no one was talking about it. So we're in the bar after work. I'm like, you guys see that email about Poland? They're like, yeah, but we got a family vacation and coaching Little League and all this stuff. And at that time, I'm like, I'm not married. I'm like very adventure travel focused. I'm like, go to my boss. I'm like, can I go do this even though I'm active duty? And they're like, well, we'll check. Turned out I could. So I ended up getting picked to go do that. And that was scary, I'll be honest. Going to Poland, trying to instruct, they all speak English, but second language, there's some language barriers there.
Sure.
The young guys had all gone through F-16 training in Tucson, in Arizona. So they were Western trained, spoke the same language, spoke the same tactics. There was a clear difference between those guys, which is primarily who I flew with, a lot of brand new wingmen or people going through the flight lead upgrade. And then the older guys who had learned everything in Poland, they kind of just pretended I didn't exist.
Oh, gosh.
So, like, they, like, didn't acknowledge me at all. But the guys that were close to my age were awesome. And so I had so much fun there. And I got to fly around that country and travel while I was there, and it was just really cool. And so that, again, was, like, very uncomfortable, but taught me a lot. That felt like this really clear example in my mind where it's like, I saw this email, I felt the excitement, like, this sounds like a cool opportunity. I also felt the apprehension of, like, going and teaching in just, like, an unknown environment with unknown cultural things and all this stuff. I said yes to that, and it was awesome. And I was like, okay. And so the next year, I already have orders to go to Holloman, to the F-16 training base, to be an instructor after Texas. Right, like 2 months before I'm supposed to leave, I see this email from the Air Force Personnel Center that the Thunderbirds were hiring, and this was the last email, like, hey, applications are due next week. Dum-dum, if you haven't
You've
seen.
already missed a couple emails.
Because AFPC sends out a lot of emails, and I'll be honest, I didn't read all of them. Because it was constantly like, oh, we need an exec
I am shocked, man.
in Germany. Oh, we need someone to go help with this exercise. And I'm just like, I know what I'm doing. I know where I'm going next. I'm not paying attention. For whatever reason, I open that one, and that little antenna goes up again, like, this is how it's intrigued me. I read the minimum requirements, and I meet every single one for the first time. And I also have gone through this period of just, like, cutting my teeth as an instructor, getting to deploy, teaching in Poland, where I have enough self-belief to actually do something about it. So I go to my boss, Bear's his call sign, and he was a great boss, like a mentor. We had talked a lot about my career planning. I'd never mentioned the Thunderbirds. And I'm like, hey. So this was not like a movie moment where I'm like, sir, I want to apply to the Thunderbirds. I was like, so I saw an email today. The Thunderbirds are hiring. And then I just like wait to see what he says. And he's like, okay, do you want to apply? And again, not a movie moment. I'm like, I think so. And so I'm like throwing the ball back to him, being like, what's he going to say? And I talk about this moment a lot because I think it's a great example of the power that people have as a mentor or a leader, because I was at a fork in the road that leads to two different lives. And I am like on this fence. If he had said, Mace, you already have orders to Holloman. They're expecting you there. We should have planned for this a little bit sooner out. Applications are due in 5 business days. You should apply next year. I would have said, sounds great.
Which he could have justifiably done.
100%.
Yeah.
And instead he said, I think you'd be perfect for that job. What can I do to help you get your application in on time? And that one decision by him changed my life.
Wow.
And we got it in the last day.
I hope he knows that.
Oh, he does.
He does. Good.
I've talked to him about it, and I texted him just maybe like a year ago, just be like, I don't know if you quite realize, like, all the stuff I'm doing now. I mean, I met my husband when I moved to Vegas for that assignment as well. Like, my life would be completely different.
Well, and not to go on a tangent, right? But none of us knows the ramifications of any of the decisions we make. Some seem little, they can be big, and some seem little, and they are little. But certainly when it includes someone else, particularly young people, like the things we say or do can really make a big difference in their lives.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So you throw your hat in the ring. How does that work? Do they just give you a call, or do you have to come interview, or what?
Yeah, it's a lengthy process. Yes. So the application itself, I think mine was like 45 pages, 40-something pages.
Goodness.
It's every performance report, every check ride, all your physical fitness tests. At that time, you also sent in a photo because they need to make sure the blue suit's going to look good on you. It's very tight. Like letters of recommendation from generals, a personal statement about why you want to be on the team. It's a whole lot of stuff. So I send that in and wait. I get the call that I'm going to go out for the semi-finalist interview. So they bring out 12 of us to one of the air shows on the road. I'm trying to remember if it was either Langley Air Force Base. I think that was the first one. They bring out 12 of us for a whole weekend. Part of it is so that they can get to know us. Part of it is so that we see what we're actually getting ourselves into, because there's so much more than just flying the demo.
I'm sure.
They want us to see what the planning is like, what the debrief is like, what the biggest thing is probably the public interaction piece of it. Like, you are a precision demo pilot. You are also a character at Disney World. Like, you have to be on. You have to be friendly and personable, and you are the face of the Air Force for those 2 to 3 years. So I go to that. There's 3 spots available on the team. So 12 of us for 3 spots. It's number 3, which is the right wingman. It's number 6, the opposing solo. And it's number 8, the narrator.
Which usually gets to do something fun the next year?
So at that time, you were the narrator the whole time.
Ooh.
They've changed it since then.
Okay.
Now you move into a different position.
Okay.
And the Blues, I know also, it's the same. You start as the narrator and you move to the demo. So you were the narrator the whole time. You do get to fly the media flights. So any of the celebrities that are flown by the team, you're doing that. So you get to meet a lot of cool people, but you also don't get to fly in the demo. So I go out there, do the interview. I think I interviewed with the commander and the DO, and then otherwise it was kind of just like a bro check. Like, you're just hanging out with everyone, and they're just trying to see if you would... Are they going to want to hang out with you for 240 days a year on the road? Like, are you going to cause drama? Are you just annoying? Like, that is a legit concern because team dynamics are so important. So I go to that, come home. A couple months later, I go back for the finalist interviews.
Okay.
Now it's down to 6 for 3. And I think we went to Niagara Falls because that's where the show was that weekend. We hang out with everyone again. We already have a little bit of rapport there now. But now we do the 12-man interview. There's 12 officers on the team, and they all sit around a big boardroom table. You sit at the end, and they all ask you questions.
Wow.
It ended up not being that bad, but the anticipation of that was intense. You're just like, what is this going to be like? So I did that, came home and waited again, and my time to move to New Mexico is like rapidly approaching. Like, we keep trying to stiff arm them, being like, we're waiting to see what's going to happen. And they're like sending me all these emails of, here's your sponsor. Do you have a house yet? And I'm just like, la, la, la.
We're looking forward to seeing you.
Like, I'm not coming. I'm not going to be there.
Hopefully.
And I was the supervisor of flying, so the SOF. So I was sitting at the ops desk in my squadron in Texas one morning. The first thing you had to do is go out, drive the airfield in the morning, just make sure there's no FOD on the runway or something. So I drive around with the light on the truck, drive the length of the runway. I'm back on like the ramp where it's not a controlled movement area, and my cell phone rings. And I see it's the executive officer from the Thunderbirds. Oh. I pull over, put my flashers on, and I'm like, hello? And as soon as I answer, it's on speakerphone, and all 12 of them are just like, congratulations. So that's how I found out. And then I'm like, I'm probably not supposed to be on my phone here. I was parked. I was not driving. Yeah, and I just remember just the high that I felt, being like, holy crap, this is going to happen. Mm-hmm. And then you realize how much you have to learn again.
That's right.
Back to being a beginner.
It's euphoria for a moment, and then it's fear.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, my goodness. Well, let's take a step back. Who and what are the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds?
Yeah. Well, I think everyone's familiar with the Blue Angels. So they're the Air Force's version of the Blue Angels.
But not to, pit them to somebody else. They're their own team, obviously.
Yeah, 100%. And people think we hate each other, but everyone knows everyone.
Yeah,
between the two teams, they work together a lot. No, they're the Air Force's elite demonstration squadron. So fly the F-16, do about 70 different locations of air shows a year, do a few big flyovers, Daytona 500, Indy 500, Super Bowl being like the big ones. Mm-hmm. They're known as the Ambassadors in Blue or America's Team are common things that you'll hear them called. And their mission is really recruit, retain, and inspire. The Blues and the Thunderbirds are like the biggest recruiting tools. Between the two teams, we're in front of like several million people every year. I mean, there's one show in New York where we had 250,000 people a day. Wow. There's the Huntington Beach show, the Pacific Air Show, and it's over 1 million people on that weekend. So you are in front of a lot of eyeballs for people, if they didn't come from a military family, that might never have exposure to that kind of thing. So there's the recruiting element, but there's also the like trust to the American taxpayer.
Yeah.
It's an opportunity for them to see the precision, the professionalism, just like what our military can do if they're otherwise removed from it.
Yeah. Well, you said recruit and retain. Obviously, we want our other Air Force members to feel good about what we're doing when they see this team with the precision. But I like what you said about getting in front of eyeballs, but I would submit you're almost in a sense getting in front of hearts. Right? Because for you, it happened a little later when you went down and saw those F-15s take off with the afterburner. But for a lot of kids, myself included, and a lot of people who've sat in that chair, they went to an air show at 8 years old,
100%.
And it was just like, boom, this is amazing. This is what I want to do. And so, hats off to parents who take kids to air shows because you need to expose them to different things. Also take them to symphonies and take them to sporting events, but take them to air shows because you never know when that spark might light. And that's the point. They see it, they hear it, they feel it. That's what I want to do. And it'd be cool to know, I don't know that we ever could, how many young people are maybe in the military or on their way because of shows that you flew.
It's the most rewarding part of the job because you expose them to what becomes their dream and you show them that it's actually a thing that they can do.
Yeah.
And that was a big part of my time and my story on the team because I was really able to connect with so many people, at every air show, in the autograph line, the number of little girls that would come up to me and I could just see that they related and they would have that spark of inspiration moment. I would literally see their face light up when they connected the dots. Like, oh, that jet, that girl, I'm a girl. Like, wait a minute, I can go to do this. Yeah. And that was just so cool to be a part of for them. And then with social media growing very rapidly during that time and people starting to follow me there for jet videos, the number of DMs I would get from people where I actually got to hear firsthand stories of exactly what you're talking about. Where people are like, I saw you fly last year. I met you. Here's a photo of this. Like, you probably don't remember me, but here's a photo of you with your thunder pose and your glasses and everything. And I just got accepted to the Air Force Academy. Or I was a cadet when we met, and now I'm at pilot training.
Yeah.
Or I went to pilot training and I just got an F-16 and I wanted to tell you. Like, I could list so many of those. And I would get teared up when I read them because you feel like you're changing people's lives.
Yeah. No, that's great. That's why they do it, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
And so now you flew the F-16. We don't have to make this. People can search the internet for the Thunderbirds. We're not necessarily going to explain everything about them, but just so we have some thoroughness to it. They didn't always fly the F-16.
No.
What else have they flown?
So the team's been around a minute, 1953.
Wow.
So yeah, quite some time. So they started in the F-84G. And when I look back at the aircraft history, I'm always surprised how often they changed airframes.
Back then.
Because it slowed down for sure as you got to recent times. But I'm just like, the amount of work that has to go into redoing the demo every time you completely change an airframe, and also the proficiency, it's just like a whole other world. So they only flew those for a couple of years. And then F-84F, so swept wings, pretty similar. And then to the F-100. And they flew that for a decent amount of time, but there was this little blip in the middle where they're like, let's try the F-105 and only 6 shows.
Never mind.
And they were like, no, that wasn't a good idea. And I wish I had more actual specific stories about what happened, because all I know is that there were several issues. I don't know what those issues were. I guess it's very big and heavy and wasn't as maneuverable. They couldn't get as close in formation. Mm. But I would love to know more specifics because there's got to be stories there. Back to the F-100, eventually to the F-4. which people loved when the Thunderbirds flew the F4.
Sure.
I've heard so many stories. They're like, the F4 was so awesome. It's loud.
Unless you're the maintainer.
Yeah. Yeah, the smoke. Like, I think number 4's tail, who flies in the slot, like right behind the boss, would get all like soot on it, get all blackened from the boss's jet. And then the T-38, which was quite the downgrade, let's be honest. It's a trainer. Like, it's a fun airplane to fly, but not as loud, obviously. I think it was because there was like fuel crisis, oil prices.
So this is early 70s.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everything got super expensive. So they're like, T-38 trainer, that's what it is. And then unfortunately we had the Diamond crash, which people may or may not be familiar with, where the Diamond is numbers 1 through 4. All 4 of them during a loop hit the ground.
2, 3, and 4 are just watching the boss. You call him the boss?
Yep, boss. Yeah.
And so they don't know what's coming.
Yep.
And yeah. And what year was that? Do you remember? 83?
82, I think.
82?
Yeah. And that was kind of like, I mean, when I got to the team, that was still such a part of the team's history. And like every year we would do something on the anniversary.
Yeah.
It was talked about a ton. There's a giant painting of those 4 pilots, like right where we walk every single day. It's just so, it was such a pivotal moment. I think that the team was really at risk after that of being just taken away. Like they considered just discontinuing it.
Yeah. How long was it, do you know, from that? Because that's, one person breaks a leg or a neck, you can replace him or her. The whole team goes in. How long was it till?
I think it was like the following year when then they went to the F-16.
Oh, wow.
For the T-38. I couldn't tell you exactly how many months the team was down for, but I mean, that's like cancel everything for a while. Yeah, it was crazy. I can't even imagine what it was like.
On to
at
happier
time.
things.
Yeah, for sure. So the F-16, which great improvement from the T-38 anyway. And then they're still flying the F-16. They've gone through some different variants, right? The Block 30 and now Block 52s, which that's a lot of thrust in a clean Block 52 F-16 at 100 feet AGL.
Wait, are you suggesting an airplane can have too much thrust? This is a fighter pilot telling me an airplane? that sounds, no way.
I would say when I was new to the team and you're doing a sea level show, you just have to be careful.
Wow.
You
because of the number?
You can go supersonic on accident, frowned upon. The FAA doesn't like that. You can also G-lock very easily, right? Like one of my maneuvers is the max turn. So I'm doing essentially what can be a 9G turn 150 feet off the ground. Like there's no, if you G-lock, you're done. Like there's no recovery time there. And so you would have to modulate power. You couldn't just throw it an AB for that. You would for sure G-lock yourself. And then when it's cold and you're at sea level, if you do an afterburner takeoff, you have to be really careful not to overspeed your landing gear. Like as soon as you feel that the wheels, you're like, oh, gear up. Watching the lights and you're like watching the airspeed, like, okay, made it. Yeah. Because it will hit 300 knots very fast.
Wow. All right. So selection is there's an application process. There's requirements. You put it in. You get recommendations. You get interviewed. We talked about that. Then you get selected. What's the transition like? I mean, you talked about what it was like showing up in Misawa and all the things you had to learn. Now you have to learn a lot. And as we've seen in recent documentaries, it can be overwhelming. But what was that like for you?
It was fun and difficult. In the Combat Air Force, there's lots of jokes about loops to music. Like, how hard could it be? Like, surely the Thunderbirds is not that hard.
Well, to be clear, you're not listening to the music.
Oh, no, we don't hear the music at all.
We hear it as the audience.
Yes.
Okay.
We're very focused, and there's a lot of radio calls happening. That was interesting, though, because once you got one-on-one with people, once I was on the team, they would be like, what is it like? It seems super cool. But then when it's the group, everyone's like, Thunder Chickens, loops to music. It's probably the same for the Blue Angels. So I get there, and already experienced F-16 pilot. So there's almost this weird pressure of like, you really should feel like you know what you're doing. Like you feel like you know what you're doing, but you don't. And you feel like you should be good at things pretty quickly, but you're not. And the flying is just so different than any other flying I did. You know, coming from the SPADs and doing a deployment that was close air support, like a lot of that was put the autopilot on and manage the sensors. Mm-hmm. I never touching the rudder except to taxi on the ground. Now with the Thunderbirds, it is hands-on stick and rudder skills. I'm doing full rudder deflection. I'm doing the high alpha with a minimum of 115 knots, 25 degrees AOA, 150 feet off the ground. Like, that freaked me out when I was learning it. If anyone from the outside that watches it is just like, well, it doesn't look like a thing a jet should do. The rejoin overtake we would have, like as the Solo's rejoining with the Diamond to form the 6-jet Delta, 100 knots of overtake at 1,000 feet was like a good benchmark for us. Yeah. And the only way you're stopping that is idle, full speed brakes, full rudder. Like you're slipping the jet, which I never did in the CAF. If you did that, people would be like, what are you doing? You're going to put yourself out of control.
Yeah.
So that was very challenging at first. It was a game of whack-a-mole where you'd go out and you'd be like, okay, today I'm going to learn the 8-point roll. And your points would be all sloppy and you'd work for a week on that and you're like, okay, I got it. Let's work on this for a while. And then a week later, you'd be like, we should probably do the 8-point again so we don't lose that. And it would be terrible again. And so the entire training season, you're just like trying to learn all these things. You feel like you got it and then you don't got it again. And honestly, by the time the team certifies, which people that have seen the documentary got a little taste of that. It's like the blessing you get from the general, good to go, and from the FAA. By the time you get to that, you're like safe, but you're still not that good yet. You don't really get good as a team until like halfway through show season. So if anyone that goes with like a trained eye or consciously looking for it, we'll see a big difference between an air show in like April and like October. It's so like night and day. The team's so much more stable.
Not to say an October show you can't have a goof of some sort or something happens.
Stuff still can go wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
But just the proficiency.
It's so much better. Yeah.
Okay. And especially, I would assume, pilots in the first year, maybe compared to pilots in the second year, maybe it comes a little sooner. But people are always moving around too, right?
Yeah. So like for me as a solo, you always start as number 6, the opposing solo. And then your second year, you become the lead solo, number 5. So now you are responsible for the timing for all the solo maneuvers. You're doing the radio calls that initiate different timing patterns in that for like the opposing passes. For anything where one jet is upside down and one is right side up, like the Calypso, the tails are touching, or the reverse or reflection, you are the inverted jet.
Whereas you were not the previous year.
Right. And people kind of think that the lead solo job must be a lot harder than the opposing solo, but as the opposing solo, you have to set all the formate. Like you are moving your jet to make the formation look good. The lead solo is just flying the parameters at the correct altitude. They're the platform. So yes, that has to be good. But there were some things about opposing solo that I actually thought were more difficult. Because number 5, you're just like, okay, on timing, 150 feet, set my airspeed, hold my altitude, don't move. Like that's all I have to do. I am upside down, very close to the ground. But other than that, number 6 has to like get in there, get the visual reference on your airplane. They're like jockeying power. And if the hit isn't good, like it's a good hit when it looks like it should to the crowd. If that is off, it's usually number 6's fault.
Well, and that's the mark, right? Is you have not only the crowd, but you have team members that are saying, did we hit it to the perfection we're shooting for every time? And
it's all filmed. And we review film after every single flight.
My goodness.
Yeah.
All right. And then so you start off, I assume, when you show up at the team, crawl, walk, run, perhaps, and you're learning all these things, like you said, that you didn't do in the CAF, but you didn't need to do.
Right.
And now you need to do it as part of the demonstration.
Yeah, for sure. You don't want... People are like, oh, it's so cool that you fly inverted. In the CAF, you don't want to just flip upside down and hold it.
It hurts.
All the stuff in the airplane will fall into the canopy. Your snacks, your piddle packs, now in the canopy. Like, it's just... It's not practical. But yeah, you start formation stuff. It's going to be like one airplane going out and leading it, and you're trying to fly on the wing to do a loop and a roll, and you're doing that over and over and over for an entire flight, just trying to get closer, closer, closer. Once you're stable on that, like on the boss, now they'll add in a wingman. So now you're one removed from the source, and all of a sudden you thought you had it figured out, and now it's way harder again because you're at the end of the whip, and they're bouncing around. And it's just progressing as far as closeness and number of aircraft, but you also start much higher, like 2,000-foot floor. Then you just keep bumping it down until you get to like your actual minimums, which is like 100 feet off the ground.
Wow. And so that whole time we do it repetitively so that we're used to seeing what we're certain, checkpoints, because it's not the same, right? We saw that in the documentaries as well. Yep. You think if you just come into the overhead brake, we always fly generally in the same formation, but to make it look good for the folks on the ground, you might shift it around just a little bit.
Yeah, they call that the cheat, where it's like actually not just symmetric because the crowd is down on the ground. They're looking up at an angle, so they're not seeing you symmetrically. So to make it look the best for them, one jet will be like further forward than the other. And it's a lot to learn. My first year there, I would run into people at air shows that I knew from previous squadrons. They'd be like, what's it like? And I would be like, the flying is a lot harder than I thought it was. And they'd be like, really? I'm like, no, trust me, it's hard. Like, watch my Delta roll today. There's a good chance that it's not going to look perfect if you're watching me in the far left aircraft, because I took me the whole first show season to get that down. To roll removed from the source on the inside, you're like pushing while you're rolling is the weirdest. That is like the hardest maneuver as the left solo. I digress, but it's challenging.
Well, plus you want to make it look good. Yeah.
For sure, you're really hard on yourself. We notice things that most of the crowd would never notice. Like, they think it looked perfect, and we're just like, oh, I hope no one saw that.
All right, so at some point, obviously, you figure it out. You're part of the team. You get better as the season goes along, as you said. What's a day in the life of a Thunderbird like? I mean, let's take a week, and I remember doing this with one of my Blue Angel guests. But, I mean, I assume you don't maybe always go home. You might just stay somewhere in between. But, I don't know, pick a typical week and maybe start on a whatever day makes the most sense.
Yeah.
Tell us what it's like.
Yeah, for sure. So a normal week, let's say we are going to go back to Vegas. We're going to go home and not stay out on the road. So Thursday would be our day we leave and go to the location. So Thursday mornings, everyone shows up. The squadron's a zoo. The C-17 is there. All the suitcases are getting loaded up. The entire rest of the squadron is getting ready to go. The team is like 130 people, and about half of those go to each show, a little bit more than half. So you're taking, 60, 70 people on the road. So it's not just the pilots and the jets, right? Yes. So that whole movement is happening. We're bringing a spare engine, just the support is massive. And then we brief our cross country. If we're flying to San Diego, it's a pretty easy day, less than an hour flight. If we're flying to New York from Vegas and we're having to meet the tanker, we're air refueling multiple times, and we're looking at weather for the entire country, it can be a lot more complicated. So that day and its complexity, a lot of it does depend on how far you're traveling and whether a tanker is involved and whether the tanker is on time and good to go and in the green, all that. Like, that can throw wrenches in plans, of course.
Yeah.
You fly cross country. We do not have anyone to ferry our jets. I think a lot of people have asked me about that, so I guess it's a misconception that we would have, like, other pilots, like second-class citizen pilots who just ferry jets.
Yeah, I would do it.
Right? Like, you just want to fly cross-country in a tiny F-16.
And you just roll in like rock stars and pick up your airplane and
Yeah,
go.
exactly.
Okay.
It is not like that.
All right.
We fly ourselves everywhere, so a lot of flying, kind of boring cross-country flying in the Viper.
But you're not locked in formation. You can relax and...
Unless there's weather.
Oh, okay.
So... some of the most challenging flights were cross-country flights where it was just socked in weather and you're flying. So the first 4 jets would be led by the boss. They would fly and fingertip off of him. And then the lead solo, I would lead the trail element with a radar lock on him. So my second and third year, it was nice because I was just locked and had to just be a good platform. I'm eating my snacks, looking at my friends on the wings who are just like staring at me and probably have to go to the bathroom and need a drink of water, but they can't do anything. When you're on the wing in that situation, though, it can be brutal. Yeah. Especially when we would have to rejoin to the tanker. You're in the weather trying to get gas on the wing. Spatial disorientation's a thing. It's kind of like the worst. So the weather and the length of the flight really determined how challenging that day was. We get to wherever we're going. We would usually do a site survey if the weather allowed it. So as long as the airfield had high enough ceilings, we would drop in and we would run our lines for our maneuvers.
Instead of just landing, you're going to look around a little bit.
Yep. So we would top off with gas, make the flight a little bit longer. But we would want to see, the boss would want to run his lines for the different maneuvers he's going to lead. For solos, we would want to run a few opposing passes to look at our references for timing, because there's a few key spots that we map out in advance. There's a certain distance from the show center, a certain angle off, and then they're symmetric, and those are like our hack points where we start our timing. So we want to get eyes on those. There's another point that's almost just like a get well. 10 seconds later, you're like, okay, we're on pacing. If those were very visible, like a big red barn in an empty field, awesome. If that was like the corner of a patch of trees that looks like all the other patches of trees, it could make your day really hard and the whole weekend really hard. So some show sites way more challenging than the others. So we do that for like 30 minutes. We land. Usually there's reporters there, plane-side interviews. So that was something that took some time to get used to, talking on camera, because it's hard and intimidating at first. but B, also the fact that you're going to land and you're going to have like mask face and messy hair and you're just going to get on local news. That just became normal. Those interviews are very much like, what can people expect if they come to the air show this weekend? Like, what are the Thunderbirds? They're very easy questions, but still something that took some practice. And then we would go home. We would go to the hotel for the night. The next day, Friday, in the morning, there would be school visits or hospital visits or something like that. Usually that part of the team would go to. And then that afternoon, we would run a practice that mirrored the show as much as possible. Everything from the ground show where we like all march out together to the salute at the end to the debrief. Like, we tried to make it almost exactly the same. And honestly, some locations, there were people watching. They would open it up on like a military base for friends and family.
Right.
Or sometimes the Make-A-Wish kids would get to come to that show and then we would meet with them afterwards, which was always super cool. So that's Friday. Almost every Friday night there's a PR event. You're going to something that the city puts on or the air show puts on. And it's also where you're supposed to eat dinner, but you never actually get to eat, right? Because you're just talking. Like, you're like, oh, a lobster roll. I remember distinctly we were in New Hampshire. And I was so excited about this lobster roll that they had on the buffet. And I got one, and it was just beautiful. And I was like, finally, because I've been taking pictures and talking to people. I took one bite, and I turned around, and someone's like, can we take a picture with you? It's like, my mouth is full. So I'm like, okay, like trying to finish up this bite of lobster roll. I set it down on the table. I turn around. I like talk to them for a couple of minutes. I take a photo. I turn back, and then they had been like cleared. And there was none left. And it's like the most champagne problem ever to have in the military, but I just remember being so sad. So that's Friday night. Just meet and greets. You are a character in Disney World. You have to be on. Those could be really fun. Sometimes they were exhausting, honestly. Sometimes you're just like, I just need a second. Maybe I'll just go to the bathroom just to get a break from people. But
Even
then,
if I don't need to go.
Right. Inevitably, someone would start talking to you while you're in the bathroom, which is my favorite. When you're literally like in the women's bathroom, like in a stall. You have to take your whole flight suit off, right, to go to the bathroom. So you're like sitting there in your little undershirt and some stranger lady is talking to you through the door while you're trying to pee. And you're just like, could you just wait for me outside the bathroom? Like, this is weird. Does anyone else think this is weird? It's just some of like the funny parts of that job. And then Saturday, Sunday are basically like mirrors of each other. We have a little bit of free time those mornings, and we would get a police escort to the airfield around like 11 a.m. So those mornings were actually some of my favorite times in the entire week because we would usually go work out, a few of us together, go for a run, and then go to a local coffee shop. And it was just like a stress reliever, not in uniform.
Nobody knows who you are.
Just with your friends.
Yeah.
And then you go do the air show.
Nice.
And you land, you do the autograph line, go to debrief, and then sometimes you'd have another PR event, sometimes not. Repeat on Sunday. Monday, you go home on a normal week. So again, briefing across country, looking at the weather, flying back to Vegas. Occasionally, if we had multiple shows that were all, like, say, on the eastern half of the U.S., it wouldn't make sense to drag everyone back. So we would just stay on the road, which there were some pros to that because we would usually get 2 days off on the road then, depending on the location. Could be fun or not, depending on the location. But usually we would go home, and then it's not like you land and you just get to be like, okay, see y'all on Thursday. You land, you have to file your travel voucher every week. Gotta get paid, gotta get that per diem.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so we do not get away from the admin responsibilities that everyone else has to deal with. But then Tuesday, I think another misconception is that we would have Tuesday, Wednesday off. Tuesday is a normal work day on base with practices. Sometimes
like flying practice. Wow.
Sometimes one, sometimes two. So sometimes we would double turn on Tuesday show practices.
No kidding.
I guess just the level of precision and proficiency you have to maintain is so perishable. You get rusty so fast that if you, like later in the season, we would do a little bit less of those. But the first half of the season, you need those practices. And then Wednesday is your like 1 day weekend. It's your 1 day off. Realistically, at home, it's the day to do laundry, to repack, to high five your spouse, your kids at school. So you'll see them at night. That's it. Yeah. It's errand day. And then you would leave again on Thursday.
But you know that going into this, right? It's
conceptually, yes.
Oh, okay, that's a fair point. But
yeah.
In other words, it's not like it's happening to you, although it kind of is, but you've sort of
signed up
volunteered for it. Yeah.
For sure. And that's like, I think something that a lot of us struggled with, I know I struggled with for sure, is late in the season, you're tired. you're tired and you miss your family and you want to be home, and you can get kind of grumpy and you get kind of short with each other, and you're like, yes, these are like my good friends, but also like, I'm so sick of you. Yeah. And you've got to remind yourself, like, you're in one of the coolest jobs that so many people want, and you're grateful for that, and you can acknowledge that, but you hold at the same time, like, these things are true at the same time, that sometimes you're just like, I don't want to go do a meet and greet right now. I'm so tired. But it's hard to talk about that without sounding ungrateful, because it is such a cool experience, and it's like an honor to be in that role, but it's not an easy schedule.
Well, we're humans. I mean, right? There's the chronic fatigue of doing something at such a level for so long, and then you're lacking, right, the space in your schedule to, I don't know, go fishing or just do anything else, right? So no, I totally get that. So is that part of the reason the tours are only 2 years for most?
Yeah.
Are there some that are longer?
So usually 2 years. If something weird happens, it will be longer.
Okay.
So sequestration, that team didn't fly for a season, so they did a third year. We had a mishap on the team in 2018 with a fatality, which shook the whole team. Still a massive thing going on when I got there. We brought someone back, so 3 years for them. And then COVID happened. And that was my second year on the team, which became my second of 3, was supposed to be my second of 2 because of the pandemic. We only did, I think, 6 or 7 show sites that year. Normally we do 35. And so the biggest concern was that those people who were on their first year in 2020 are supposed to take over as the instructors.
Right.
And they don't have the depth of experience where the Air Force, big Air Force, squadron commander up, there was a lot of risk that the team was going to take on coming off of having a major mishap in the recent history. It was just tripped the threshold, so they asked us all to stay for a third year.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And I think I saw you, if it was in fact you, fly over San Diego at one point when you were doing...
Oh, yes.
You all decided, well, we got to get out there and show that the world is still okay. And I think at some point you came over San Diego. I don't remember what time of year it was.
Yeah, America Strong flyovers. And that was the last one we did.
Oh, was it?
Because we almost had a midair with a helicopter.
Oh, jeez.
Yep.
A Navy helicopter? There's a lot of those around here.
It was a police helicopter, I believe. Yeah, and the video's actually on YouTube. People can search it because we're being filmed by a news helicopter. So America Strong was really cool. We got to go to places where they wouldn't normally see the team. We flew with the Blue Angels for a lot of those, so the team's working together in a way that had never been done before, which has created a lasting relationship that's still intact. But those were really challenging flights. Because normally when you're flying in an air show, it is very scripted. You know exactly what the next radio call is. You know exactly what the turn is, how many Gs it's going to be, how long it's going to last. You can anticipate everything because you've done it 100 times. You're also in a TFR. So they're protected airspace. No one else is allowed in. You get 2 Delta formations, 2 different jets with a little bit different handling characteristics. And now you're going out and you're flying at 1,000 feet over some of the most populated areas in America. And the first couple we did, we were getting used to it at that point, but there weren't a lot of other people airborne because early in the pandemic, the airspace was just dead.
Right.
It's silent on the radio. It was super weird. As we got further into those, we had done the joint one with the Blues up the entire eastern seaboard. It was a 7.5-hour flight. We had 2 separate sets of tankers, obviously different systems. We went from Atlanta to Baltimore and D.C. and Philly and Boston and New York. And mind you, we're in close formation for all of that. And we're low level for all of that. So it was the longest by far any of us had flown in formation. So your arm would literally just go numb. And you'd be flying 3 feet from another jet, looking at your arm, just
hoping it'll do what it needs to do.
Come on. And your neck would really start to cramp too because you're
just looking,
used to looking, especially as a solo. We only flew formation for 10 minutes, and we would fly formation for 30 minutes at a time, have a little bit of a break between cities, and then you're right back in. So the level of focus for the length of time was the most I'd ever done in my entire career, for sure. I feel like we're brain surgeons performing, 10-hour surgeries or something. It's just exhausting. But as we started to do more of those, we also publicized them because we wanted people to come out in their backyards and look up and see us. Right. That was part of the point.
Right.
But that also meant that people with their private pilot's licenses decided to start taking off and try to see us airborne. And so we started to have a lot of traffic conflicts with slow-moving, small aircraft, and a lot of air traffic controllers that weren't used to 12 fast-moving jets coming through. So there were some scary moments on those flights for sure. And then the culminating one, we did San Diego and LA with the wing commander from the 57th Wing, which is Nellis Air Force Base, in the back seat. He had approved all of these, and now he's actually going to ride along for one. And that's when we almost had the midair with the helicopter.
Yikes.
And in the video, if you see it on YouTube, we start a turn, and if you've seen the documentary, you've heard the comments like left turn. It's kind of like the saying, and you know the pacing. And so you anticipate it. So we all start turning towards my side of the formation. And then all of a sudden you just see number one roll out with no comm. And like faster than normal as well, which immediately just causes chaos, right? Like my side of the formation, just like we get left in the dust super wide. But it's scarier on the right side because number three just gets a face full of jet with not expecting it. He moves, and then number six is at the end of the whip, and he just sees two jets coming at him. He just rolls and pulls. And so no one hits each other. We don't hit the helicopter, thank God. But the news chopper, not the one we almost hit, there was a police helicopter at our altitude. We had briefed all of them in advance. So there was like a massive coordination that happens to try to clear this airspace. And they had permission to be there, but they were at the wrong altitude. So they were right in our flight path as we started the turn. There's a news helicopter filming all of this live on TV, and the broadcasters are like trying to narrate this flight they know nothing about. And so they're like, oh, the Air Force Thunderbirds, like, look how beautiful that is. And then you see the formation just like exploding cantaloupe. Gumbo's like leaves the formation. That's his call sign, my number 6. And they're just like, wow, look at that beautiful trick. Meanwhile, Gumbo thought he was about to die.
Yeah.
So we flew that, we land, and our wing commander gets out and he's like, I appreciate everything you all have done, all the work you've put in, but I think that's the last one we do of those, which I think was good. It had a massive impact. So many people saw us that year, and there's actually several people who joined the Air Force because of that.
Very cool.
Yep. But those were some interesting flights.
That's part of it, though, too, right? I mean, again, not to just keep stroking the egos of demonstration pilots, but there's a lot to know. It's hard to do it. And then you've got, of course, the weather contingencies. If it's overcast, you may have to do it lower, so you have to know all those. But then, correct me if I'm wrong, at any given moment, when you're close to someone, if you're just resetting or whatever you call it, that might be a different story. But if you need to bail out or whatever term you use, you know which way is safe.
We have an out, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that, I would assume, change at different points of the routine?
For sure, and it varies greatly depending on what position you're in. Like, as a solo, we're pretty lucky because we're the far outside in the Delta, so we always have clear airspace to our right or left. The people that have it a lot harder are the wingmen who are sandwiched in between. A lot of times it's like depth that they have, but they also need to know where number 4 is. And when you have an out, that out might just be your ability to like ease the rudder a little bit and move away. It's not an out like exit the formation with a max pull like we did with the helicopter. Like that was an extreme circumstance. And a lot of times it is just like, face full of jet. The number of moments, I don't even know what word to use to describe them, where you're flying formation, you're super focused, you're like almost in like a flow state of just
Zen.
Yeah, zen. You're not thinking about anything else. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we would hit wind shear or like something would happen and you just get a face full of jet and you would have that physical reaction of like, oh, like literally like you would cringe and I would make that sound sometimes. That happened on the regular. You'd be like, oh, and then you're right back in there. And it's just another day in the office.
Part of the job.
You just get so used to it. We always joke with the new hires, you have to like kill your survival instinct. Like, opposing passes head on at each other, passing like 70 feet apart, 500 knots each. No one in the CAF is comfortable doing that.
Yeah. Well, isn't that arguably what makes it such a spectacle? Is
For sure.
That you're doing things that are amazing. I used to ride a street bike around a track, and it wasn't racing, but it was a track that you could race at, and we'd wear leathers and helmets and all that. And we always celebrate at the end of the day if nobody crashed, because that's the thrill of it is someone might. And inevitably I did a couple times, other guys did. But at the end of the day, if you didn't, it was like that much more invigorating.
For sure. And what the documentary talks about with it being safer when people are closer together, there is some truth to that, right? Like when you are locked in and you're super focused, you know exactly where your guardrails are, where you can go. There's less ambiguity on the positions. Like there's something that's actually safer about that than just widening everything out to be safe. And obviously the crowd loves it.
Yeah.
Constantly seeing the photos comparing the Blues and the Thunderbirds. Like, who do you think is closer? Are they actually touching there? It looks like they're touching.
Well, I was going to say the casual air show, maybe first or second time, they just see jets go by and it's loud.
Yes,
they don't
for sure.
know. But there's probably the super enthusiasts.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. There's probably some of them listening to this right now.
So, all right. So you already talked about trying to use a bathroom without someone talking to you.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like a demonstration pilot job is very glamorous. I assume there's other instances like that, and I'm not digging for dirt, and you also talked about how exhausting it is. I hope you get a little break between seasons, but what are the sides of it we don't see? Yeah,
so it does seem very glamorous. I think the schedule is a big part that people just don't think about, right? Yeah. They just have their experience watching the demo. Training season is, I would say, as demanding as show season. You're home at night for some of it, but you might fly twice a day for 5 days in a row. So double turning, 10 flights, demo level flying in a week is tough. And I think it's especially tough for the first year people because your brain is like, you have a constant helmet fire. Your brain is like maxed out all the time trying to learn these new maneuvers. And you're doing that 10 times a week. You're just like, the weekend, I just remember being a puddle. But of course, there's the stuff behind the scenes of like, we fly most of our air shows in the summer. It's really hot. We live in Vegas. The ramp in August with the very tight blue flame retardant flight suit on and a G suit and all that gear, getting in the cockpit and doing a show launch where you're putting the mask up and the visor down and lowering the canopy while the jet's like just starting to start. There's no airflow yet. It's a unique form of torture. Like you actually feel like you're kind of suffocating because the air is so hot in your mask. So the heat is a big factor for sure. But there is going to the bathroom in the jet, which is always a tough thing in a fighter jet, always a tough thing in the F-16. The seats recline 30 degrees, and there's just no space in that cockpit. Like, I'm 5'10", so I'm like the size of the average guy, 5'10", and there's a couple inches between each of my shoulders, maybe 2 inches above my helmet, and you have, like, you can't, like, cross your legs or anything. Like, they're in their little spots on the rudder pedals, and that's the only place they can go. So that is an acquired skill, especially being a woman, right? Flight suit modifications, extra long zippers, all the things. I don't mind telling the story because it's funny. I would say I probably had like an 85% success rate of using a piddle pack in the jet, but you can't see what you're doing, right? Like it's like doing a wall sit against the back of the seat. You have to tuck your head down because the canopy's in the way. So your like chin is like against your chest. Also, you're flying the airplane. Minor detail. I could not do it in formation for sure. No. So it was only weather's clear. We're in between air refuelings. I can fly like line abreast a mile or two away from whoever's next to me, set my autopilot, which is like okay, but you still got to adjust the throttle all the time. And I could make it happen. But still, you can't see what you're doing. So you're like, okay, finally, I feel so much better. And then you like lift the piddle pack up, which is essentially just like a plastic bag with like the same stuff that's in a diaper, gels up. And sometimes you'd be like, oh no, that math is not mathing. You're like, surely there should be more in that bag. It
must have gone somewhere.
Where did it go? And again, you can't see. So you're just like feeling the back of your flight suit. And at least for us, I don't know, the guys probably I know they have problems as well because I've heard their stories. Probably not as many as we have. But if you messed up, it surely just overflowed the back, which means it just dumps into the back of your flight suit. So now your butt is just pee pants. And you're like, I just love my job because you're like sitting there in this very, very tailored flight suit, cruising along, knowing that you're about to land and be on camera. And that there's going to be this fanfare when you arrive. You are the headline. People are so excited to see you. And you're 32 years old or whatever at that point. They're flying a $30 million airplane in your pee pants. Yeah, so the number of on-camera interviews I gave with like probably like a wet butt if I had turned around. And it was just like we would talk about it among ourselves all the time.
Oh, sure.
You're so desensitized to it. Yeah. It's not even embarrassing. It's kind of just funny.
Yeah.
So you're just like, yeah, that's just part of the job.
Yeah. I'm debating sharing a story since you were vulnerable, but I don't want to try to one-up you either. But I will tell you that you speculated about the other side of it, and I'll tell you my experience. Right? So blood needs to be in certain parts of your body when you're doing things like your brain and your muscles when you're pulling G's. Doesn't need to be in other parts. So there was times for me where I was like, and maybe I shouldn't admit this to the world, but it's like, I need something to work with here because the blood is everywhere else. So, so we have our own challenges.
I've heard so many stories. Nothing phases me at this point. I'm just like, you did what? Okay.
Yeah. Well,
long flights.
Good on you for figuring out how to use it at all. Obviously, number 2 is a whole different story. We won't even go there. I think
just try to avoid it.
Yeah, my body always seemed to know, like, nope, that's just not an option.
Same, but I've heard stories again, as I'm sure you have.
Yeah. So the documentary, I mean, we've kind of hinted at a little bit. I don't know. I looked it up on IMDb, whatever it's called. Had about the same rating as the Blue Angel one. I enjoyed them both, but I guess just a way to show a little behind the scenes like what we're doing today. But
for sure.
You still know some of those folks?
Oh, yeah. I know Primo really well, who's one of the main characters as well. I've talked to him about the documentary after the fact. I know everyone a decent amount. Most of those people got hired like right after I left. They started working on that. I wrap up my time on the team winter of 2021, I'm training my replacement. Early 2022, I leave active duty, and I think it was winter of 2022 that they started filming. So it was all the people that were replacing me, and then their replacements.
Yeah. Can we transition to the listener questions? Because what I do is I tell my Patreon supporters that I'm going to sit down with you, and I say, what should I ask? And so I got to get my cheaters these days. It's awful. But Gary Fry wants to say, why did the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels, if you care to speak for them, wear the old-style helmets that were phased out 20 years ago? And you brought your helmet today. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I'll let you answer, Gary, but I never wore the joint helmet. I assume you did, or did you?
With the hammocks and stuff?
Yeah. And you probably just don't need it, and it's heavy.
It's heavy. So a couple of reasons. And I knew that it was kind of tradition, like the traditional heritage look of it, and just the way it's painted with the patch on the back and our call signs and everything. And also that we don't want the NVGs, the hammocks, all that stuff. It is hard on your neck on very high G flights that we're doing all the time. But I also reached out to one of my friends who is in AFE life support to be like, hey, is there anything else that I don't know about this? Because I saw this question in advance. And she's like, no, it's just a 55P, like the standard gray helmet that other squadrons fly with. Mm-hmm. This visor piece is kind of like the really unique part. And then it's just the coating that they put on it to make it shiny that makes it stand out. So it's just slimmed down. We don't need all that weight on our necks.
That's what you need. Yeah, the little visor assembly is almost old school.
It is old school. And I think it's the aesthetic of it is cool.
Yeah.
And that's why they keep it.
Yeah.
But if you turn that thing too far to the left, the little knob, it doesn't have a stop, so it will just uncoil, and there's a spring in there. Many of new Thunderbirds have discovered that they will have to bring the crew chief's beer after they fly out their airplane with their visor cover adjuster.
Yeah, I can imagine. Did you mostly fly the same airplane the whole time?
Yeah, so we have an assigned tail that our name is on.
Yeah.
So most of the time, sometimes it's down for maintenance, or like you would occasionally end up in another airplane, and it is a noticeable difference because you get so familiar with that airplane, especially doing like really precise maneuvers.
I remember talking to Steve Foley. He was the boss of the Blues. I was all proud of myself that when I was flying the F-18, it was mostly the C models. And I said, Axel, I've almost got 1,000 hours in A's and B's. I think I might make my own patch. He goes, Jello, I have 1,000 hours in the same aircraft.
Yeah.
The same exact aircraft. Like, ooh. And so you get pretty familiar with it, I'm guessing.
And we flew so much. And to put that in perspective, I did a full 3 years in Misawa, a full 3 years in Texas. And when I applied to the team, which was just like, I apply December or whatever, and I leave later that year of like maybe July, August, I had, I think, around 850 hours in all of that time.
Okay.
I leave the Air Force after 3 years on the team, and I was like 20 hours shy of 2,000 hours.
Wow.
Probably just under 1,000 hours in a Thunderbird jet.
And probably, right, not a lot of tactics, virtually none.
None.
Probably nothing at night?
No, we aren't even night qualified because we aren't all F-16 pilots by trade.
Oh, that's right.
So we're pulling people in. My opposing solo was F-22 guy. We had A-10 person, F-15. So their experience in the F-16 is very minimal. So we're like, why add in an extra?
An extra variable. All right, Mike Bridges says, how do the solo pilots find each other? Seems like low altitude ground clutter, no smoke. I don't know why he says no smoke. I thought you have smoke, but anyway, and little to zero azimuth change would be challenging, yet they do it every single time.
100%. It is hard. And the number of panicked seconds where you're like, no, you need to be visual with the other person, and you're just like, where are they? Where are they? Where are they? So opposing passes head on, 450 ground, so we'll say 1,000 miles an hour of closure. So it's happening very fast. Needle nose F-16 that's painted white. On days where it was cloudy and it was kind of just like those inside of a ping pong ball type days where everything's flat light, so hard to see. And honestly, it was when we would each turn our smoke on, which was a certain distance from the show center, that is usually when you would pick the visual up. It would be dang near impossible to pick up the other person before that. So the smoke drastically helps. But again, if the background's like whitish, that could still be super hard. There were times when we wouldn't find each other, and that's when we had abort criteria.
Okay.
It'd be like 5's aborting, like 5's blind, 5's boarding, and we would rudder towards our appropriate sides. So we would just like ships in the night pass each other very far away. The crowd is like, what was that? Still loud.
The announcer comes up with something real quick like...
Yep, he just goes on to the next maneuver.
Yeah.
That didn't happen often, but we have a safety contract. Like by 4,000 feet away, we need to be able to see the other jet, and that's from the center point. So multiply that by 2 for our actual distance from each other.
Over
and
a
if you
mile.
don't,
Wow.
we're aborting.
Yeah.
So we have an out. It is very challenging. As he said, we're not radar locked to each other. Like we might have the Link 16, where we have some symbology around the other person, but we try to declutter a lot of that stuff because you do need to set all your spacing and stuff visually. So it is mostly just a lot of repetition and eyeballs and learning what it should look like when. And you just have a sight picture. You know where to find them.
Yeah. What percentage would you say is inside, outside?
Oh, man. It's going back and forth so frequently. A lot outside, a lot in the HUD, though.
Okay.
Like, you're rarely going to look down unless you're, like, can't find the ground reference that you're trying to find for a hack point or something, and you're, like, looking at it, and you're like, oh, okay. I'm, like, orient myself on the map to that. But normally it's going to be looking outside, trying to find where the diamond is, because, like, when I see them do this, I should be here. So it's a lot of positioning off of them. And then when you're running an opposing pass, the cross-check is wild. And it is, like, one of those skills that would get rusty so fast. If we took, like, a week off for Christmas or spring break or something and came back, it was a struggle for the first flight back to get your brain reoriented. You literally have a stopwatch mounted on the glare shield that you wind up. And as the lead still, you'd say, let's hack now, like standby hack, let's hack now. And then each solo in their mind is saying that at the same pacing afterwards, and they're hitting the start button on the end and now. So you got to get that down first, or you're not even starting on the same sheet of music. And you're on opposite ends of this 5-mile TFR. And then you have certain distances from show center that you have a GPS range readout from. And that should line up with a certain amount of time elapsing. So it's like every 10 seconds, every 5 seconds, you should be hitting a certain number, and you should be over a specific visual reference that you've studied in advance. Opposing passes are hard.
Yeah.
It's like you have a split second to look at the right location and your brain grab the right piece of data before you need to be looking somewhere else. And it was one of the hardest things to learn, to get that pacing down. And then once you're on time and you're like, as a lead solo, I would be making radio calls, and number 6 would be queuing off of those to see if he was ahead or behind. So he would be making throttle adjustments if he could a little bit, or if it was something bigger than he could adjust just with his left hand, he would make a radio call and be like, 5, push it up, or 5, pull it back. All this is happening in about 14 seconds. And then your visual as well. And so you have the radio calls, you have the timing. End game, though, you're just seeing that other jet, and number 5 is just flying on heading, on airspeed, on altitude. Number 6 is offsetting slightly and high slightly, so that the person on the ground who's looking up sees number 5 on the inside, number 6 on the outside. Like think about it as a triangle. It looks like they pass through each other, but we're offset. Yeah. And we don't have a specific distance that we're targeting. We're trying to just make it look like the jets are the same size. So if number 6 is too far away, his jet will look tiny compared to number 5's, and you're like, oh, you got to be closer. I do tell a story in my book about when number 6 got too close and almost hit me, which is the scariest moment I've ever had in an airplane. Yeah, but it's all eyeballs.
Do we need to wait for the book, which we'll talk about, or can you give us a little primer?
I can for sure give you a preview. So it's like one of those stories I haven't told on social media or on a stage because it's complicated, and you have to know a lot of like the different language and stuff. I talked about outs, where we each have our side that's safe. So We've kind of already teed this up. So this happened while I was number 5. It's training season. I'm a brand new number 5, and I'm training a brand new solo who came from the F-22 world. Like, doesn't have a ton of hours in the F-16. Great pilot, great guy, but he's just learning. And as we all are when we're brand new to being a solo, we've been working on our opposing passes, and he's really far away from me, right? His jet looks tiny compared to mine because survival instinct.
Right.
You're flying straight at another airplane, and coming from the CAF, we have a 500-foot bubble. A good hit, you're probably passing 70 feet from each other, I would say.
A good hit meaning a good pass?
Yeah, where it looks good to the crowd.
Right,
It's
okay.
a good visual hit.
Okay.
So that is very stinking close. And so I had briefed him beforehand. I'm like, hey, you need to get a little bit closer. I had had the same experience when I was 6, and my number 5 had told me the same thing. So this is the posing inverted. So I am upside down, still trying to acquire that visual that we just talked about. He's right side up. I'm upside down. I'm still doing all the radio calls, the smoke on, all that stuff. We see each other, so we don't abort because we're blind. We see each other, so we should be good. Because we pass so close together and he's pointed straight at me, it is normal for him to be in the middle of my HUD at distance. Like, it's not like he's going to be way offset to one side because he's passing so dang close. So I see him, everything's normal, and then there's this split-second moment where I realize I should be seeing that line of sight where he starts to move to the right side. Actually, it was the left side because I was upside down, but where he starts to drift to the side he's going to pass on.
Sure.
Imagine like a car coming down the highway in the distance. You just see it's a speck getting closer, and then all of a sudden as it passes, it's like breakneck, passes you super fast. And that line of sight's not happening. So I'm like, oh shit, he is not offset at all. Like, he's pointed straight at me. And the time that I recognize that what I'm seeing is not what I should be seeing to the time that we pass each other is like 2 seconds. It's so small. But in my mind, I go through temporal distortion where the world slows down and I have all these thoughts. I'm like, I should say something. No, there's not time to cue the radio. Like, I'm not going to key the mic. The time to get the words out of my mouth and him hear them too long. Then I'm like, I should abort to my side. I should rudder to my side. That's the safe space. I am upside down over brown, featureless desert north of Las Vegas. Our show line is a row of Connex containers. My safe side is the side that the crowd is on. There's no one out there. This is practice. There's nothing out there. There's like a dirt road that you can't even really see when you're that low. So then I'm like, I don't know for sure what side is my side. Because when you're inverted, like as I just said, I was like, he moves to the right. Wait, no, that would have been my left because I was upside down. It's just very disorienting in that split second. So I'm like, I should move to my side. I don't know what my side is. If I move to his side by accident, I will kill us. Because that's where we both go the same direction at the same time. So I decide I'm going to not move. And he surely will fly around me. His airplane got so big in my HUD. I've never seen another jet that big in my HUD that was not going the same direction as me before. And then he disappeared under the nose of the airplane, under my feet, above me. And I closed my eyes for a second, and I'm still alive, and I don't know how close we passed. And he doesn't know how close we passed.
Was there some sort of telemetry later that you could measure?
There's like no sensors that...
But you didn't hit.
We did not hit each other. It could have been... I mean, I don't think it was inches because I think I would have like felt it more if it was, but it was way closer than normal feet. That is by far the closest call I've had in the jet. That would have, like, there's no saving it. Had we hit each other, we're both just done, right? It's just a big ball of fire. Yeah. I'm supposed to say, solos, ready, hit it. And on the hit it, I roll right side up. He rolls upside down, and we have that good hit, not literally, where it looks like our jets are 90 degrees of bank passing through each other. I don't even make that radio call. And then I just, like, roll upright eventually, and eventually I call 5s clear. So there were like 3 radio calls that I normally would make, but I was just like shocked into silence for a second. And then I clear behind the show line, and so many thoughts go through my head of like, I'm mad, I'm scared, what should I do now? Like, should we just go home? Mm-hmm. What do I say on the radio? And then I compose myself, and I'm like, all right, no more opposing passes for the day. Let's set up for our individual maneuver. And we like flew 8 points and aileron rolls and all that stuff for the rest of the flight, and went back and landed, and we salvaged the rest of the training. And when we landed, I didn't even need to be mad at him because he was like, he felt so bad. He knew what happened. Like, as soon as we landed, he was like, I'm so sorry. He came over, and we looked at the tapes. We talked about what he was seeing, and he just misjudged. He was just like, he thought he was close before, and when I said you need to be closer, he's like, well, maybe it's supposed to look like this. And he found the inside of it. But he actually got really good at opposing passes really fast after that because he knew what the limit was the other direction. And him and I are really good friends. He knows I tell this story. He knows it's in the book. Sure. That was scary.
Yeah.
And it's burned into my brain. Like,
it was a traumatic event.
It was a traumatic event.
Yeah.
I can see exactly every little part of it.
Goodness. All right. John Clark says, what was the most difficult and or rewarding part of transitioning from number 6 to number 5?
Oh, well, this was a great story we just told. I think the rewarding part was like feeling like I was in a leadership role mm-hmm. and like I was doing well in a leadership role. Like, that's just empowering. I think a difficult part is taking on that training role and being a teacher when you have 1 year of experience in that. It's not really that much. And especially teaching people that don't come from the F-16. And as a new instructor in the CAF even, there's some time where you figure out how far you can let the students push things before you need to intervene. And that's where the learning takes place. So you can't just stop them before they get to that point. Mm-hmm. It was interesting to try to find that on the Thunderbirds because the margin for error is so small.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was a challenge. Just took some practice.
Well, and I would assume that most of you approach it like, look, this is the position I'm now in. I'm not going to pretend to be the expert. I've done it for 1 year.
Yeah.
So I'm going to approach this with humility and reason, and hopefully your student or your wingman in this case knows that. And next year he was doing the same thing.
Exactly. Right. And it's actually a really welcoming, open culture where you're like, someone new struggling with something, you're like, yeah, I get it. I literally struggled with that for all of last year. Like, that's normal.
Yeah.
The struggle you're having is normal. Don't feel like you're not cut out to be here.
Yeah. Matt McDonough, who co-hosts the Spirit of Time podcast, wants to know if you can comment on watch culture in the U.S. Air Force flying squadrons, especially at the demo squadron.
Yeah. So I think on the Thunderbirds, it varies a lot by team because each team really does create their own little culture because the turnover happens so frequently. Mm-hmm. When people are leaving, 50% of the pilots are new every year. Every 2 years, it's a whole new group of people. Uh-huh. So I personally usually just wear my Apple Watch. I mean, today.
We're covering it up because it's cold in here.
I know. Today I did wear my Breitling because I also saw this question in advance.
You're giving away my secrets. That's okay.
Sorry. So I think a lot of people get squadron watch orders at different points. So they'll have usually it's a Breitling and it'll have their squadron patch mm-hmm. and people wear those with pride. Also, watches get beat up in the jet, though. Like, doing, BFM dogfighting and trying to, hit your chaff. People are just smacking their wristwatch against the side of the jet, and you get scratched on things. So I think a lot of people will wear, a watch they were issued, or not a smartwatch in a squadron where classification is an issue. But in the Thunderbirds, a lot of us wore Apple Watches or Garmin. Garmin is nice because it has some cool sensors in there with, the pressure in the cockpit. Your watch will go off before, the jet might tell you if you have an issue with that. There, for sure, is this, heritage of nice watches that are branded around jets and around squadrons and stuff, like Bremont. The Thunderbirds used to get Rolexes, I think back in the 60s. I don't know when they knocked that off, but there was a certain point where the reg was like, nah. Yeah. The max gift limit is $25. You're not getting a Rolex anymore. But occasionally they come up for auction. Really? And it'll be a gold Rolex with a Thunderbird patch. They're super cool. Yeah, so that doesn't happen anymore. But there's a few key brands. Rolex used to be, No, I don't know that most of us can afford a Rolex while we're on active duty. I would say Breitling's probably the biggest one. Vermont's pretty popular. Yeah, so some squadrons do bulk orders.
I think it's like anything. Some people are really into it. Some people are into better golf clubs or
golf is another kind of similar thing.
Yeah, so it depends on what it is. All right, Joe Kunzler says, solos rule and you made that Viper rock, but you had to also fly in formation. How did you figure out how to put your Viper inches from another? And I'm going to take a stab at this answer for you. Well, you practice.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it quite a bit, and I've met Joe. He's been at many an air show that I flew in. It is really that building block approach. You start further away, get a little bit closer, get a little bit closer. You always have that safe place you can move to, and you just get more stable with time.
Yeah. Did you necessarily, I'm guessing, like the solo part of the routine better than joining the Delta? Or
for sure. Yeah, the solo maneuvers are so fun. And there's something about just going out there and like raging in an F-16 with no, like a clean jet, no external stuff hanging on it. Tons of thrust, tons of G available. The crowd loves the solos. Yeah, so solos do rule. That's like a thing we always say to each other because there's this funny rivalry between the diamond and the solos. Like they'll be like, "Oh, diamonds are forever," which lamest thing I've ever heard. This isn't an engagement. And then we'll say, "Loved by millions, hated by 4," because everyone loves the solos.
Very cool. Well, I would never compare myself to your experiences, but I did have a chance to fly the F-16, 170 hours in Block 15s.
So
when you talked about raging in a clean jet, I got a chance to do that. It was a lot of fun. So enjoyed that thoroughly. Derek Burney, what was your favorite maneuver as a solo pilot?
Oh, vertical rolls for sure. So I liked that one because it showcases kind of all the things the jet can do in one maneuver. So I would come in just below the speed of sound, like we're limited by the FAA. So I'm like at 0.94, 0.95 Mach, 150 feet above the ground. And then I would do an 8G turn to straight vertical. And I would spiral up till I hit the top of the TFR, 18,000 feet. Or if I started to get decoupling till I hit the max AOA. But it is just like a spectacle to see. And it's like a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
You get like 5-6 spins. You top out and you look back and you're 15,000 feet in the air higher than you were when you started, and you see your white spiral of smoke all the way down to the ground or the ocean, whatever, and you're just like, wow, this is a cool job.
I love those moments.
That's a good one.
Yeah, those are great. All right, Brett Muirhead says, were there any difficulties in getting acclimated to the nonstop schedule associated to being a demonstration pilot?
Yes.
We may have already answered this one. And constantly moving from city to city. In fact, I think we did answer that one.
100%. It was something that took practice, honestly. I got really good at it by my third year, where I had a system. I would pack like pre-made healthy meals, put them in a little Yeti cooler, send them with my crew chiefs on the C-17. I would like look at what the gym options were beforehand and trying to control what I would eat, like staying healthy because we were on the road all the time, and then also still getting my workouts in really helped with the constant time zone changes, and kind of just gave me like a routine, even though it was in a different location.
Yeah. Well, and at first you're figuring it out, and
sure.
then you can have a chance to have some best practices.
Yep.
All right, last question is from Edward Parker, who says, the Blue Angels documentary talked about added springs on the stick for more precision formation flying. I've read the F-16 side stick is much more sensitive than the Hornet, so he's interested in hearing, Edward, you talk about any modifications and how it may be similar or different. And so before you answer that, I want you to know I've tried very hard not to just keep comparing the Thunderbirds to the Blue Angels. I'm more familiar with that, and again, I was a Navy guy. You know, your team stands on its own, but yeah, at least for me, I know that they have that stick and they have to hold the pressure. I don't know if you have anything like that or any other modifications to Edward's point.
Yeah, so they are, to give those guys credit, I got to fly in the backseat with number 5 during a demo practice in 2020, I think, and they're working hard. Like, that is a lot of pressure on your arm for that entire time, and you can tell it's hard. So we have the electronic trim, so we will just bump it up and down with the switch on the stick. Full nose down trim in the F-16 is about 20 pounds of resistance. Some people would fly with full nose down trim for the whole demo. As a solo, I flew with about half nose down, so you're only holding like 10 to 12 pounds. but it was still something that your body had to acclimate to. It was pretty common to get like tendonitis or like tennis elbow because all those little, you're not like using your whole bicep. You're using like the tiny little muscles in your forearm and your wrist to hold resistance for 45 minutes and constantly make tiny adjustments. But that nose down trim allowed you to fly much smoother because you are much more precise, like slightly pulling on the stick than you are pushing. And so the nose down trim kept it so you didn't have to push to make adjustments. You would just like release back stick pressure a little bit.
So you're holding the tension and it gives you more precision.
Way more precision.
Than if you're just kind of at the top.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Would you change it in the routine?
Sometimes you would play different jets were slightly different.
Okay.
Like you'd be like, oh, seven clicks nose down is where I want to live. And then you'd be like, no, this feels like a little bit too much. Let me bump it up. And there was one point, as long as we were doing a high show, meaning like the weather was clear, I had like a tiny little break between two maneuvers. The 5-card loop. There's some stuff that's with 5 jets, and I was the jet not in it. So I would be like high behind the show line, and I would take the trim out, like shake my arms out, like move my neck around. And then, I probably had 5 seconds. And I'm like, okay, back in.
Back into it. Wow. Crazy. Did you ever have to do a demo in a 2-seat? And could you?
Occasionally.
Was that noticeable?
Yes, and that has less gas because the seat takes up some space for fuel. So if we had to use a D model, the 2-seater, we would try to put it in one of the diamond lines because the solos just use so much fuel. If it was in one of our jets, we would bingo out before the end of the demo and have to land, usually. Or you'd have to like cut some maneuvers because we just didn't have enough gas.
Yeah.
So we use a lot of AB in our stuff, and it also just handles differently.
And that's what I was trying to ask is just because of the bigger canopy and whatever else, but
most noticeable with rudder authority,
okay.
Like the knife edge, you would normally, especially if you weren't at sea level, to hold that for the whole length of the show line, you would have top rudder, like almost full deflection. If you snapped it to 90 degrees and did a full boot of rudder in a D model, you're just like on a rocket ship climbing sideways. It was crazy. You would end up like 300 feet higher than you wanted to be. You're like, whoa. So there were some adjustments you had to make.
I have to think, especially by the 3rd year, that there gets a point where you're just in the zone and you just feel it and there's some mastery, perhaps.
For sure.
I've got to think that's a good feeling.
It takes a lot of stress off of your plate, for sure. And I think it allowed me to enjoy the rest of the experience a little bit more because it didn't feel like it was a distraction from my bandwidth to just fly the jet, which was taking all of my bandwidth. So yeah, you definitely get there late in the season. And then the 3rd year, I think actually was the most comfortable year for me. Like it felt the best, even though I didn't expect to be there and I was tired by year 3. Yeah. I also was like, okay, I know I can do this. I know how to manage it. I'm good at my job at this point.
Is that part of the reason you decided to leave the Air Force, or what made you decide after?
Yeah.
That was like a pinnacle moment being a Thunderbird. So what was your mindset
Several
in 22?
Factors. Yeah, so it was a few things. So I met my husband in like a few months after I moved to Vegas, so late 2018.
Okay.
We got married in 2019, my first air show season. So, and he has a son, so I have a stepson. So I have, kind of a new family.
All right.
And because of having a stepchild and split families and all of that, we can't just pick up and move to a new base 2 years later. His mom is in Vegas, all that kind of stuff. So there were some family considerations that weren't there before. Starting in early 2019, right around the start of my first air show season, I started to get really bad back pain. I had the highest G profile for sure as the left solo with the max turn, that pull for the vertical rolls. Even the repositions between every maneuver are 6, sometimes 7 Gs. A lot of high G flying. I really, really struggled with that in 2019. Got my arms around it a little bit for the 2nd and 3rd season, but it was still something that impacted my life a lot. And I feel like that was my body being like, maybe you shouldn't do this for 7 more years. Kind of like chronic pain. And then the 3rd reason is by year 3, I would never say that the flying is like mundane or routine, but it's lost its initial excitement because you've done that demo 1,000 times. So you're like, this is cool, but there's other parts of the job where you start to pay more attention, and those interactions that I got to have with people where I could see that inspiration happening. I could see the spark in the little girl's eyes, or I would talk to someone, they would tell me 6 months later what they went and did because of it. That became my favorite part of the job. And I knew going back to a gray squadron, I wasn't going to get to do that anymore. Not at that level, at least. And I felt like there was just unique timing with my family considerations already, my body being beat up, already considering other options, having 3 years of Thunderbird experience, having kind of like a captive audience. I was like, I'm in a position where I can use my story to change other people's lives in the best way. And like, that sounds really good to me personally. That's like giving that back to them. It's flexible. It felt like the perfect fit, but also like a massive leap of faith to go from the structure and the job security and the camaraderie and all the things that active duty is to being like, I'm leaving and I'm going to go work for myself. How the heck do I file paperwork for an LLC? What's QuickBooks? Oh, I have to pay quarterly taxes? Like, it was just, and it still is, a steep learning curve in the entrepreneurial space, but it's been so much fun.
Well, and it's not like you have to negate the things you did. You had those experiences, and they were amazing. And, you know, we get older and things change. But so now you've had a calling and you're moving on. And I alluded to it earlier, but you're doing some speaking. You've written some books, and we've been sitting here with a book in our presence the whole time. And if we time this correctly, this episode should air the day before it comes out. But tell us what else you're doing now that you're out of the military.
Yeah, so it started off with keynote speaking being the primary thing, and there was just such an amazing reception from the business world. And I think there's this natural intrigue about what we do for a living or did for a living. Yeah. It's intriguing to people. They have the pop culture reference of Top Gun.
Of course.
The timing of Maverick coming out was great for me. All of that. And then there's this element when you bring the human side to it where they see that you're not perfect and you have struggles and they can relate to you. That's a really powerful combination. Yeah. And that was also very cathartic for me to tell my story about the time in Japan. Like, I'd never talked about that. It's not like I was telling all my bros in the squadron about this time in Japan when I almost quit. Like, it was not a thing. And so to be able to just openly talk about that stuff and write the narrative in a way that felt super authentic, that wasn't controlled by any talking points or like no oversight. Not that the Air Force had me like handcuffed, you know, reading lines I didn't want to read or something. But it just felt so freeing. And so I've been doing that. I'm still doing that very much so, keynote speaking. I wrote 2 children's books. They're kids' picture books about a little girl, Lily Padilli. She's an 8-year-old who wants to be a fighter pilot. Okay. And her grandpa's a former fighter pilot in the book. So there's stories there. It's Upside Down Dreams and What's Your Call Sign are those 2. And then while all that was going on, I realized that I had so many stories that people would be intrigued by, but that also they could learn from. The head-on collision being one of them.
Near.
Yeah. Yes.
We're here talking.
Edit that. Near head-on collision.
Yeah.
But there's so many stories like that, and it's not just like the shock and awe of like, holy crap, that's just a world that most people don't live in. It's like, okay, something like that happens. What do you do now? How do you build trust? How do you maintain it? And so I was like, I have so much more to tell, and I think the only way to do that is a long-form personal development book. So the flip side, How to Invert Your Perspective and Turn Fear into Your Superpower, is this unique combination of almost like a memoir, because every chapter starts with a story, but it's also personal development, self-help, because I pull from those stories a lot of things that are rooted in human psychology. I cite a lot of studies and experts in those fields to kind of bring it all together for like tips and tricks and frameworks that anyone can use to overcome self-doubt, to deal with fear, to push themselves to make those bold decisions that are exciting but also scary. A lot of it is around like, what do we do when something goes wrong? What do we do when something unexpected happens? How can we train ourselves to respond appropriately in those situations so that we don't make it worse? It's like responding versus reacting.
Right.
Anytime you have an EP in the jet, like that's a skill that people can use in their normal lives. And so that's all in the book.
Yeah. So it comes out September 9th, 2025.
September 9th, yes.
And again, if this airs on September 8th, then folks can hurry up and order it. And you're gunning to get on some lists, right?
Yeah. You know, I've always been an overachiever that sets goals that seem ridiculous, but it's worked out so far. Yeah, I'm trying to make the New York Times bestseller list. This will be interesting because when this airs the following Tuesday night, we shall find out if I did or not. But those lists, that one specifically, counts all pre-sales and sales the first week. So sales that go through September 13th count towards making the bestseller lists.
Okay.
So if you're listening right now and it's before that day,
or watching,
if you're ever going to buy the book, please do now. And Christmas is only 4 months away.
Oh my goodness, already.
So get it as a gift for someone too, or all the someones.
See,
that's my spiel.
Yeah, no, you're right into the regular world of being an author. I'm told is you spend 90% writing the thing and then another 90% promoting and marketing
100%.
and everything else. But you'll be able to call yourself, well, you're already an author, children's book author. But yeah, I look forward to it. And so in other words, like many memoirs, my own included, is like you finish it and it's like, oh, it's cool. Now I know more about this person, or Jello in my case. But you're really like connecting the dots for them, something tangible that they can next day in the office or wherever say, oh, well, I remember how Mace did it.
Yep.
So I'm going to see if I can apply this.
100%. I think about myself and my thought process and how many times, especially in this recent chapter of my life, navigating all the things where I've had a moment of uncertainty or a big challenge or whatever, and I've thought about something that I heard someone else say, and I've been like, oh, that's good perspective for this moment. Like, you pull on those, whether it's something you read, you heard in a podcast, something a mentor said, and I'm like, I want to give those tools to other people so they have something useful in those moments to pull.
Cool. Well, what's the future for you then? Continue, you think you'll write again? More speaking?
It's too soon to ask about another book. That's like asking someone who has their newborn baby if they want to have another baby. They're like, yeah, I'm just enjoying being able to make an impact. So I don't know exactly what form that will take.
Okay.
But it's, anything where I can get the message that's inspiring, get the tools that are helpful in front of more people, in front of the right people, whether that's speaking or writing, or it's through media opportunities, or it's through a podcast, or whatever it is. I'm just having fun doing it right now.
Well, good. Well, you certainly did the podcast thing today. You flew out here and just to be here. And in fact, we need to wrap up so I can get you back to your flight.
Yep.
But no, this has been a lot of fun, Mace. Usually the last thing we ask about is Michelle Curran, call sign Mace, which I've seen in capital letters.
Yep,
so
it's the acronym.
It is? All right. So some of the Air Force folks get a little, little tight with their call sign stories.
So I think maybe it is just an Air Force tradition. We have a pretty strong tradition of only telling that story in person. So I resisted for so long. I would tell it during my keynote speech.
Okay.
And then on podcast, I would be like, well, I can give you a hint, but I can't tell you. And then people were getting mad eventually. You can only dangle that for so long.
That's right.
And I wrote about it in the book. So
all right.
I will tell you. So it is an acronym. Basically, my second flight in Japan, so brand new wingman.
Looking for a call sign, by the way.
Looking for a call sign, as we all are.
Yep.
I'm flying in December, northern Japan. It's very cold. I'm flying the Block 50, which is a very powerful engine. I had learned to fly the F-16 in Block 42s, I think, in Arizona in the summer. So less powerful engine, very hot. Very cold weather, very powerful engine. These two things are not the same, but my young, dumb brain doesn't recognize that. And so we go out to do BFM, basic fighter maneuvering, aka dogfighting, and I am offensive. So we call fights on. I am very binary with my skill set at this point, where I don't adjust for anything. I just do what it says on paper to do. So I'm like, full AB, count for a certain amount of time, roll, pull, G-straining my little heart out, looking up at my instructor who's defensive, being like, I should be able to gun him. G-straining, pulling. Still can't point at him. What is happening? I am losing my vision because of these G's, to the point where I have full light loss. I see black. I'm still awake. I can still hear. I'm still aware of what's going on. Mm-hmm. Instructor calls, knock it off. And I'm just out of breath, disoriented, like, what the hell? How does anyone do this? We land. We debrief. We watch my tapes. Lo and behold, going max afterburner and just leaving it there in the Block 50 in the middle of winter, I was supersonic at turn circle entry, aka Mach at circle entry, MACE.
Mach at circle entry. And for the folks out there who don't understand maybe why that's a bad thing, because now you're arcing.
Ginormous turn. I could think about driving a car at 60 miles an hour and you need to make a turn that you should be at 30 miles an hour to make.
A sharp turn.
I could never turn tight enough to point at my instructor to gun him, which was the whole goal.
Mach at circle entry. Wow.
It's a cool story.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it.
Ouch.
Well, but you never did anything dumber to get anything else.
Right. That was the only thing they really had. So
that's a good thing. Well, Mace, this has been a lot of fun. We've asked about the future of you. Just real quick, getting back to our theme for the day, future for the Thunderbirds. I mean, the F-16 is going to be around forever, so I don't want to ask you about red, white, and blue F-35s.
Yeah.
But, I mean, they're going to keep doing what they're doing, right?
Yeah, I think the Viper's going to stick around for it's just such the perfect jet, and maybe the F-35 eventually, but there's just so many things that have to happen, cost-wise, to maintain the stealth stuff. Like, it's a big leap to make, so I think it'll be a while.
Yeah. Probably more likely that than a red, white, and blue F-22, though.
Oh, yeah, because we don't have very many of those.
Yeah. All right. Well, appreciate you coming on the show. Good luck with the book. Thanks for coming out to San Diego today. Before you go, I'd like to bestow upon you a Fighter Pilot Podcast guest patch that I'm guessing, you probably still wear your jacket around like I do. So maybe not.
This looks just like me getting my call sign.
We got to just find a way to put a little arcing in there.
See those eyeballs? That's definitely me.
Well, yeah, I used to wear a yellow visor quite frequently, so you could see mine. But, yeah, well, I mean, you got better, right? In the spirit of Monty Python.
Learned a ton from it.
Yeah.
It was great. It was much like the opposing solo thing. Like, you find that inside limit, and you don't quite cross it, luckily. It makes you better, ultimately.
Yeah. Before you go, where can people follow you, find you, book you, maybe as a keynote speaker?
Yes, all of my branding is pretty cohesive. So macecurran.com, so call sign last name is my website. Speaking info is there. Book info is there. You can find the book at any major bookstore. Instagram, Mace_Curran. LinkedIn, Michelle Mace Curran. I do create a lot of content, like 3 to 5 pieces a week. That's about content similar to what's in the book. Little snippets, lessons, takeaways, 5 tips for whatever. A lot of times with a cool flying photo or video. So social media, hit me up there.
Awesome. Well, Mace, this has been a lot of fun. Thanks for coming on the Fighter Pilot Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for watching this episode of the Fighter Pilot Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something new. I still do every episode. Now, as a quick reminder, we try to explain all the jargon, but in case you missed something, head on over to fighterpilotpodcast.com, where we have a glossary of all the different terms we use. And while you're there, check out some of the cool merchandise that we offer. For additional content and to help support the show, please go check out our Patreon page. We'll see you next week.